The man with the pink eviction notice didn't move, his hand trembling slightly as he stared at the brown-haired man before him. The words on the paper burned in his mind. "You're being evicted." But his eyes told a different story. There was anger, determination, and a flicker of something else. Hope. He clenched his jaw, voice tight but steady. "You think this will scare me? The HOA pays me rent. I'm not going anywhere." His finger pointed fiercely at the man in yellow. Across from him, the man in yellow, standing tall with arms crossed, smirked slightly. "Yeah? Well, the HOA says otherwise. You're behind on payments and the notice is final. Pack your bags." His voice was calm but edged with authority, like he'd said that 100 times before. The tension between them crackled like static in the air, thick enough to cut with a knife. Between them, the officer shifted his weight, arms still crossed. His face was unreadable, but his eyes flicked from one man to the other, measuring, waiting. He'd seen disputes like this before, so many in fact that he knew the game, but something about this felt different, more dangerous. Behind the scene, the lake was still, reflecting the blue sky and distant mountains. The rustic cabins sat quietly, unaware of the storm brewing just a few feet away. A golf cart was parked nearby, its engine silent, as if holding its breath. The only sound was the faint rustling of leaves in the breeze, contrasting sharply with the high tension at the front. The man in yellow finally stepped closer, his voice lowering but still firm. "Look, I don't care what you say. I've been here longer than you think. This isn't just about rent, it's about my home, and I won't leave without a fight." His eyes flashed with defiance, daring the other man to challenge him further. The man with the eviction notice clenched his fists, frustration bubbling to the surface. "You don't get to decide that. The HOA makes the rules, and I'm telling you, I'm not leaving. Not without a fight either." He took a deep breath, voice rising just enough to carry the weight of his words. "You think you can scare me? Well, I've got something you don't, something that changes everything." The officer finally stepped forward, voice calm but commanding. "Enough. This isn't the place for a fight. Both of you, step back and cool down." His eyes narrowed, signaling that he was serious. "Or I'll have to take action." His tone left no room for argument. Suddenly, the man in yellow reached into his pocket, pulling out a small device, something metallic that shimmered in the sunlight. The crowd, hidden behind the rustic cabins, started to murmur softly, sensing that this wasn't just a simple dispute anymore. The man in yellow pressed a button, and a strange, low hum began to ripple through the air. The ground beneath them vibrated slightly, and a strange glow emerged from the device, casting flickering lights across the scene. The lake's surface seemed to ripple unnaturally, as if reacting to the ominous energy now in play. The officer's eyes widened slightly. Something wasn't right. The man in blue and yellow exchanged tense glances, realizing that this confrontation was about to take a turn no one could have predicted. And just as the tension reached a breaking point, the device emitted a blinding flash of light, and the air shimmered. The world seemed to bend, twist, and warp before their eyes. In that instant, everything changed. What was a simple dispute over a trailer park suddenly became a fight for their very reality. The blinding flash erupted so suddenly that for a moment everything seemed suspended in time. The light was so intense it felt like the sun itself had descended into the small lakeside scene, swallowing the rustic cabins, the mountains, and even the calm surface of the lake. When the glow finally faded, the air was thick with an unnatural silence. The man in yellow blinked rapidly, trying to regain his composure as the strange hum subsided. The officer took a cautious step forward, eyes scanning the surroundings with sharp focus. The man with the eviction notice looked around, bewildered, his anger replaced with a mixture of confusion and fear. The landscape had shifted. The lake's surface rippled, but this time it wasn't caused by wind or any natural breeze. Instead, it seemed as if the water itself was reacting to some unseen force. The rustic cabins looked different, edges jagged, shadows deeper, and mountains in. The distance appeared to ripple like mirages. Everything was distorted, as if reality had bent for a moment, then snapped back. Suddenly, a faint hum returned, low and rhythmic, echoing from the device the man in yellow still clutched in his hand. He looked down at it, puzzled, then slowly raised his gaze. The device was glowing faintly, pulsing with an otherworldly energy now. The man's face grew pale as he realized, what had he just activated? Was it some kind of machine, or something more? The officer stepped closer, voice tense. Everyone stay calm, but stay alert. Something's not right here. His eyes darted around, catching glimpses of strange flickers in the distance, shimmering lights that weren't there before, shapes flickering at the edge of sight. The man with the pink eviction notice, still clutching the paper, suddenly felt a strange sensation, like the ground beneath him wasn't firm anymore. His stomach churned as he looked at the lake again. The water was swirling faster now, forming a dark vortex in the middle. Something was emerging from it, something neither of them could explain. A ripple ran through the air, and a voice, deep, resonant yet strangely calm, seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. "You've awakened what was sleeping." Beneath the surface, it boomed softly. "And now, everything is about to change." The tension that had built between the two men was nothing compared to the storm about to unfold. The landscape around them had become a portal, a threshold to a realm beyond their understanding. And the question that hung in the air was simple yet terrifying. What had they truly unleashed? The voice's words echoed in the silence that followed, reverberating through the trees, across the shimmering lake, and deep into the very earth beneath their feet. The dark vortex in the water swirled faster, pulling at the air like a hungry beast. The man in yellow clutched his device tighter, his knuckles white, realizing he had no idea what he had just activated, or what it had awakened. Suddenly, a jagged crack split the ground near the cabins, sending stones tumbling into the lake with a splash. The officer shouted, "Everyone stay back. We don't know what's coming through." His voice was sharp, commanding, but a flicker of doubt crossed his face. He'd seen strange things before, but this was unlike anything he'd ever encountered. From the swirling depths, a faint glow emerged, growing brighter with each passing second. Shapes began to materialize. Shadows that seemed to have no form, flickering like flames, but colder, darker. The air grew thick with an icy chill, and a strange sense of anticipation prickled everyone's skin. The scene was no longer just a dispute over a trailer park. It was now a doorway to something otherworldly, something that defied explanation. The man with the eviction notice stepped back instinctively, his eyes wide with terror. He looked at the lake, then at the strange shapes that now hovered just above the surface, swirling and twisting like remnants of a nightmare. His mind raced. What had he unleashed? Was this part of the device, or something ancient buried beneath the earth for centuries, now awakened by his actions? Suddenly, a low rumble shook the ground, and from the center of the vortex a figure emerged. It was tall, shadowy, and seemed to flicker like a flame caught in a breeze. Its eyes, glowing with an unnatural light, locked onto the human standing, helplessly around. The figure moved with a slow, deliberate grace, as if it had been waiting in the depths for centuries. The voice, now more ominous and resonant, spoke again. "The boundary has been broken. Now, the past and future collide, and you—" It paused. "You will decide what comes next." The tension snapped like a wire about to break. The man in yellow tightened his grip on the device, realizing that whatever he had summoned wasn't just a threat. It was a gateway to a new reality, and the choices made here would ripple through time itself, forever changing the peaceful lakeside retreat into a battleground of forces beyond understanding. A sudden, deafening roar erupted from the vortex, tearing through the air like thunder unleashed from the heavens. The shadowy figure stepped forward, its form flickering wildly as if caught between worlds, its eyes burning brighter than the stars. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and the lake's surface cracked, sending splinters of ice and stone flying into the air. In that chaos, the man in yellow's hand trembled as the device pulsed violently, emitting waves of blinding light. It was as if the machine itself was alive, responding to the presence of the entity emerging from the depths. The officer shouted commands, but his voice was drowned out by the tumult, helpless against the overwhelming forces now colliding in this strange, fractured reality. The mysterious figure stretched out a shadowy hand, reaching toward the humans with an unsettling calm. Its voice, now echoing like a chorus of whispers, called out, "You have crossed the threshold. Now you must face what lies ahead." The words hung in the air, heavy with foreboding, and a new wave of darkness spilled forth from the creature's form, threatening to engulf everything. Suddenly, the device in the man's hand flared brighter than ever, casting a radiant glow that seemed to cut through the darkness. A surge of energy burst forth, enveloping the entire scene in a blinding light. For a moment, nothing was certain, only the flicker of shadows and the deafening silence that followed. Then, as quickly as it had begun, the chaos subsided. The lake calmed, the shadows dissolved, and the mysterious figure vanished into the ether. The device's glow dimmed, leaving behind a stunned silence. The landscape was forever changed, half-remembered, fractured, and tinged with a new sense of possibility, and the humans stood frozen, haunted by the realization that they had glimpsed something far beyond their understanding.